should be recording. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Just living in Buenos Aires and having a good time.
You're still in Argentina?
Yeah, still in Argentina. Probably gonna be here for another month or two as well.
Damn, so you really have no plans on like how long have you been there?
I've been here for about 1.5 months so far. Um, and yeah, just my girlfriend came down about 2 weeks ago, so she's here with me now as well, and then we're just going to be hanging out here and working mainly in the city, but then also taking like day trips and stuff to other areas in Argentina and stuff like that.
That's incredible. Before we get any further into this, will you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Mike Pollard. I am originally from the UK, but I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. Went to college there and got a job as a software engineer. Worked in the US for about 3 years before I decided to kind of do the whole remote work while traveling route. So for the past year, roughly, I've been traveling around lots of different parts of Latin America while working and building software.
So you've been doing this for about a year. How often do you go back to the US? Or do you go back?
Yeah. So I've been doing it for about a year now. I went back for Christmas just to see my family and stuff, and then I'm also gonna go back um, in August before I head to Europe. So kind of just sporadically whenever it works into my schedule, but for the most part and for like the future plan, mainly just kind of staying outside of the US, but I'll go back for maybe a couple months out of the year or something like that. But yeah.
That's insane. I know when I was living in Mexico for 6 months, I was missing, I don't know, like you get really comfortable where you are, but at the same time, it's like it's not home. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know if
yeah.
that makes sense.
No, I definitely feel that as well. Like you get used to some of the stuff that you've been so used to like growing up and you're like, oh, I just like I want to buy this like product or whatever. Like I can't get hot sauce in Argentina or I can, but it's very difficult to do and it's very expensive and it's just like minor things like that that are just like annoying. You're like, fuck, I wish I could just like have this.
That's insane. So, what actually inspired you to do all of this? Because, I mean, if I remember right, what was it, like the Midwest where you were from or you were living, like Montana or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was from Montana. I was living in a town called Bozeman. And I was enjoying living there for the most part. But just after a while, I was kind of thinking that there's like so much more out there in the world that I really want to go see and go experience. And I knew like with my like the career choice that I had chosen, I was definitely possible to work remotely. So ultimately I was like, why wouldn't I take advantage of that and just work fully remotely and travel while I can to kind of just experience a lot more of the world.
Most people, I would assume, and I'm making assumptions here, is that most people would feel like bored or whatever, and they would just go visit, I don't know, California, New York, Texas, maybe a spring break somewhere. What actually made you just want to live outside of the country? I mean, at this point, it's semi-permanent, right?
Yeah, pretty much for the foreseeable future. But I guess yeah, the I just really wanted kind of like that challenge and to be like thrown into an environment that I was completely unfamiliar with. Like I'm slowly learning to speak Spanish, but I kind of really enjoy being in that environment where I don't really know what's going on, and I have to like relearn all these things that I thought were like so like basic to me back home, but now I can't even figure out how to like, I don't buy tomatoes at the grocery store or something because I'm not used to how they're like doing it here. So I'm just kind of like enjoying uh just experiencing like some of the basic things again in new environments, and just like learning so much more than I would compared to if I just went like on a vacation to like Florida or
Right.
California or something like that.
No, there's a lot to say about that when you put yourself in a new environment where you really don't know anything. I remember, 'cause I mean, at the end of the day, we all kind of take everything for granted, you know?
Yeah.
Like just going down the street, like here in New York, I'll go to a bodega, get my sandwich, walk right back. Less than 10 minutes, I'm eating my breakfast, right? And then you go to other towns in the US and you have to drive 35 minutes to go to a local fast food chain to grab your food. And then another 30 minutes to get back home. And it's like, damn, I just spent an hour grabbing food.
Yeah.
Um, the little differences like that. And then on top of that, you go somewhere where you don't even speak the language or the customs or anything like that. And it becomes a real challenge. And it's just a wake up call almost.
Yeah, it is. And you get like, I don't like anxious about just doing like the most minor things because you're like, oh, it's gonna be like awkward. I'm not gonna like know how to do it. But then usually like you figure it out, and then you feel better about yourself because you were like faced with a challenge and then you got over it. So that's something that I really appreciate doing every day.
No, yeah. And like I said, there's a lot to be said about that because I remember when I was turning 30, that's what I wanted. I wanted something new where I felt uncomfortable just going to the store, right? Um, and I think that it allows you to grow a lot as a human being and understanding that one, we're all the same at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but two, the customs and the traditions and the respect or what is deemed respectable is completely different everywhere. Um, and so I actually dragged a buddy of mine to Hong Kong when I was 30. And in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go into this place where I don't know the language, I don't know the customs, I don't know anything. And then I land and everything's in English. And I'm like, fuck, I should have done my research.
Yeah,
But I mean, it was still a good time, right? And exploring. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's incredible when people are willing to put themselves in uncomfortable positions.
yeah. And I understand like you have done some traveling as well in the past. Have like, do you have like a situation or a country that you think you were like the most out of your element?
Uh, I think Turkey, when I was in Istanbul for a few days, I didn't feel comfortable doing anything.
Yeah,
It was I think there was a large cultural difference in terms of attitude. And a lot of people did speak at least a little bit of English, right?
yeah,
Like the basics. Like in Mexico, you go to Mexico and most places will know at least
the,
hello,
yeah, the basic words to get by.
bathroom, food, beer. Obviously, if you go into the nicer areas, everybody speaks English for the tourism.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was I was struggling because everywhere I went, it seemed like people were angry at me.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And it was just one of those challenges of like, all right, do I want to go into that store? And like
Get
people are
yelled
gonna
at.
look at me. And if I didn't speak any of the languages there, outside of English, and if they don't speak English and they look at me and they're like, what the fuck do you want? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
like the tension was just absurdly high in Istanbul for me.
Do you think that they were actually like annoyed or angry at you, or do you think maybe that was just like part of the culture is like the like niceties are just not quite what they are, what
I
we're
think it
used
was
to?
part of the culture for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, like the more I watched the news there and the more I started to like understand and talk to people, because I did go and do like a few social things and met some of the locals and met people that were like traveling. And the tensions are high over there because Turkey is one of those countries that is like the bridge between east and west, and they have to try and keep peace with the U.S., with Europe, with Russia, with the Middle East. So it just seems like a very complicated country that is not
Yeah.
respected around the world. Because I don't think anybody really thinks of Turkey as much other than a country. But in reality, they bear a lot of responsibility for world peace and world politics.
Yeah, definitely. It is somewhere that I would really enjoy uh going. It's just hard working in like US time zones and going somewhere all
Yeah.
the way over
Is that
there.
why you chose Latin America?
Yeah, that's initially because I thought it would be like easiest, like if I didn't enjoy whatever I was doing, or like just to be available during the day for like meetings and stuff during like normal business hours. It seems like on this side of the world, it's just easiest to either go back to the US if I need to and just like be available during like normal work hours. Like I'm only an hour ahead of you right now, but in lots of other places, I'm like the same or even behind.
Right, right. So what all countries have you been to then?
Um, so since I started a year ago, uh, started in Mexico, went to quite a lot of different places in Mexico. Then I went to Colombia. Um, then I went to Peru, then to Chile, and now I'm in Argentina. So
How was Chile?
Chile was pretty cool. I liked it a lot. Um, I met a friend there in January, and we did this 7 day, like 80-mile trek in Patagonia, which is really cool. So it took like a week off of work to do that. And I like the nature over there is like really cool. They have like huge glaciers, like really impressive mountains, like animals that like you don't usually see that often in the US. And that part I really enjoyed. I also went to Santiago, and it's a big city, but I really enjoyed where I was in Santiago. Lots of good restaurants, good public transportation, co-working spaces, stuff like that. And then me and my friend went to Vina del Mar, which was on the coast, and we kind of enjoyed the traditional kind of like beach vibes. They even have these huge sand dunes, which you can take these snowboards that they have, and you can snowboard basically or sandboard down the sand dunes basically to the foot of the ocean, which I thought was a really cool experience.
Yeah, that sounds pretty dope. I heard, if I remember right, everybody was in Mexico was telling me that Chile is the only Latin American country that's got their shit together.
I don't know. It's like, how do you define got your shit together, I guess. But I mean, like, it seemed similar to the other places I've been to. And like, just from like a day-to-day life perspective, it seems like a lot of these places are pretty similar. But when you do get to that like macro economic level or into the politics, then it does get a little different. But Chile does seem like, from what I've read, they seem like they're doing fine. It's very expensive. It's like one of the most expensive places, like prices similar to the US for sure. Whereas Argentina, on the other hand, is like probably one of the cheapest places that I've been to. And they have the
Really?
whole thing, yeah, with their inflation and I don't know.
That's what I
It's
was
crazy.
thinking because I heard that Argentina was crazy, crazy in the shit bucket in terms of inflation and pricing. But you said it's actually cheap.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're making like US dollars or euros or something like that, it's actually like it is very cheap. But
Yeah.
if you're like a local, your currency is basically devaluing constantly all the time. So what a lot of them do is they buy US dollars or cryptocurrency or euros, and they basically like store them under their mattress or whatever as their like reserve currency and savings because they know that they can't save in their own currency because it's just going to do nothing but uh, go down in value, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, that's what blew me away about Colombia. Like when I went down there, it was like what $1 was 4,000 something pesos.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what in the shit is this? Like I thought it was bad in Mexico, but nah, like Colombia was like, nah, we're gonna take the mantle there.
Yeah, I think they started with higher numbers, I believe, but I believe in general the inflation in Argentina is worse. And right now it's like one US dollar is worth like 390 pesos at the blue rate. But then you also have the official rate and it's at like 200, which is very interesting to navigate as well. Have you heard much about like the blue rate versus the official rate of
I have
exchange in
not. I was about
Argentina?
to ask you what exactly is that?
Yeah, so the official rate that kind of the government controls and says what the currency is worth says that the one US dollar is worth 190 pesos or 200 pesos or
Okay.
something. So if you go to like a bank, like a normal bank, and exchange currency, that is the rate that they will give you.
Okay.
But it's not actually like the real rate. No one that actually is like living in this country really pays for things at that rate, basically. So the blue rate is the 300 and like 90, 400, whatever it is, equals a dollar. And you can find people on the street that will exchange these dollars at this technically black market illegal price, but it's not really black market. It's kind of confusing. And they will give you that rate. You can also go to Western Union now and just send yourself money and they will give you the blue rate as well. So effectively, if you have US dollars, you're almost doubling the money that you will see from the official rate when you deal in cash, if that makes sense.
How does that happen?
That's a good question. I believe that the government is trying to curb some of the inflation by doing like a lot of these uh, I don't know, tricks and like trying to figure out how they can get the most money through exchanges of like different currencies and stuff like that. But just through reading it, it is kind of confusing what the whole ploy of like the whole system is. So I don't know. I'm probably not the best person
It's
to ask about why
right,
things are the way
right.
they are here.
So this is almost like not currency manipulation, but it's a very strong-handed way to say, hey, there's not that much money out in the system. Let's curb inflation, right? Like raising interest rates almost.
Yeah, something like that, I believe.
See, man, that's the thing about like Latin America, man. They just don't give a fuck.
Yeah, there's like some weird corruption. Don't give a fuck. Like, like we'll fuck over you guys, but not you guys. Like,
Right, right. The fact that there's a black market for currency exchange is kind of crazy.
yeah, it's weird. But apparently, like, it's slowly becoming not a black market, which just goes to show that the original rate is kind of like or the official rate is like the corrupt one. Because as of
Right.
December of last year, 2022, Visa and MasterCard have started processing online payments at a similar rate. It's not quite the blue rate. It's called the MEP rate, which is like 350 to 360. So they're slowly like changing over to the actual rate because that is like what they see as the real value of the currency. So it's all very confusing. There's like 10 different exchange rates and you can play around with all of them. I don't know.
Yeah, see, this is oh man, this is I don't want to get in a little soapbox here, but this is kind of like one of those things where countries have been designed to kind of fuck themselves over. Um, and there is a lack and first world the first world countries, obviously US and a few others, benefit from countries not having their shit together, right? Um, I remember in South Africa, I was watching the news and they were saying that South Africa is a failed state and all these billions of dollars have been sent to South Africa. It haven't really worked, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, I don't know, just talking about how nothing is getting better in South Africa. Everything's just kind of getting worse.
Yeah.
And when I took a little tour uh on my way to like Cape Town, or no, not Cape Town, the Cape of Good Hope, we passed by these essentially cities, like small cities or like large towns, and they don't use South African money. They use their own currency.
That's crazy.
And they just fail to integrate, and the country is in shambles, to put it lightly. Um I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think of all the European, North American countries or the US that are trying to go in there and quote unquote fix things, but it's like they're not really fixing anything. They're just perpetuating the problem to a certain extent. But I don't know. It just benefits when the rest of the world is in shambles and you're the only like shining star, right?
Yeah. And then a lot of these countries become like so kind of dependent on
Oh,
uh
absolutely.
like this like huge country. I guess you could like it'd be similar to like a large corporation that everyone just becomes dependent on the product or whatever that this country has, that as they progress as a country they're still becoming more and more dependent on it, and then it's only perpetuating the fact that this one country is getting better and better while this other one is just, it's maybe improving its standards of living, stuff like that, but it's still not doing its own stuff that it needs to do to become its own like independent, like fully
Right.
successful nation.
Right. Like why have independent countries that don't need you when you can have a
Mm-hmm.
country that needs you?
Mm-hmm.
Um nah, yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. And I know that in Mexico they talk about that shit all the time. And um did you while you were in Mexico, did anybody talk to you about the president and shit like that?
A little bit. Um, not too much, but yeah.
Yeah, everybody either hates him or loves him, but
Yeah.
it just seems like he is, I don't know, just completely out of it and spending money like crazy, even though they don't really have it. I don't know. It's just,
As is tradition for a
yeah,
lot of people in power like that.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so what's been your favorite place so far that you've been to?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And you don't have to say Buenos Aires just because you're living there right now.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult because each place is kind of unique in their own way, and
Yep.
you like them for like different reasons. Like I don't like, you want to go on a beach vacation, or you want to be in a big city, or you want to be more in nature or something like that. So I think it's hard to say that I have like a definite favorite, because like they're all really cool. As I'm sure like through your travels you know as well. But for like, I guess just like working and getting stuff done and seeing cool stuff, I did really enjoy Mexico City quite a bit. And then I also enjoyed here where I am in Buenos Aires right now, and really liking that. But I also really like living in the big cities right now. So just personal preference, but a lot going on, a lot you can do, a lot of culture, maybe more so than in like smaller towns where it's like nature or like surfing or like the beach is like mainly a thing there, and there still is a lot of culture there, but I just feel like it's more prevalent everywhere in some of these like bigger cities, and you can see like the museums, the artwork, the just the people in general going about their lives, and not
Right.
being in like a tourist destination where people are pandering to you as a tourist.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between that feeling of okay, they're showing me around versus you're in the middle of an actual place.
Yeah,
and you're just
definitely.
one of many, right?
Yeah.
I met
And I
go ahead.
prefer that. I was just saying I prefer that quite a bit more than uh yeah, people wanting to show you around because they think they're gonna get something out of it, usually money.
Yeah, yeah. I I remember I feel bad, but when I did my little tour of like a few African countries, I could only spend a few days in each place, and I only did like the tour stuff, right? Like, hey, I'm paying this guy X amount of dollars. He'll take me places, show me around XYZ. Uh, but it was probably for the best because a lot of these places are, I don't want to say not friendly, but they're developing.
Yeah.
And like I would meet so many Americans in Mexico last year, and they would all basically stay in La Condesa, Roma Norte, Polanco, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
And at first, I was like, man, you guys aren't really going out. You guys aren't exploring. You guys aren't really getting to know Mexico. But now it makes more sense when if you don't know the language, you don't feel comfortable with the customs, you don't know anything. Yeah, stay where it's safe, right?
Yeah. Like you want to have a good time. Like you don't want to like accidentally fuck yourself over by going to the wrong place and not being able to figure something out or ending up in a dangerous situation.
Yeah, I mean, I when I was in Cape Town, just finding food, going out for food in downtown was like, okay, am I like what's going on here? Like it
Yeah.
was I think that was probably the saddest, worst location I've ever been.
In Cape Town, South Africa.
Yep. Yep.
That's so interesting because I just talked to two people recently and they said that Cape Town has been one of the most their favorite locations that they've been to, which just goes to show it's very anecdotal and I don't know, different for everyone.
No, yeah, for sure. Because where I was staying was downtown. And obviously, let me preface this that, this is post pandemic, right?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what it was like pre pandemic, but from my understanding, Cape Town was one of the most visited cities in the world in terms of tourism.
Hmm.
Um, Post pandemic, again, when people aren't going there and your main industry is tourism and nobody has a job now, shit gets rough, right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and they were telling me that the government never helped anybody. Um, so these are people that have had no jobs for essentially years at this point. I think they were like the unemployment rate for youth under 25 was like in the 60s or 70s. Like imagine that, like 70% of your youth just not having a job. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
insane.
crazy. That is insane.
Like there were literally corners in downtown where there were tents and fires and people were like using that to like stay warm and all this other stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is downtown. Like, and this is like the
Yeah,
nicer area. Um, and the shanties that we like drove by, it was just like it was rough, man. I was like, damn, like this is bad, like really bad.
yeah. I have a friend there right now. Um, I think he's enjoying it. I haven't spoken to him too much about it, but one thing that he said is that the electricity just constantly is going out. Like it's expected every day that there will just be a total like blackout. So you could be like driving on the highway, um, and then all the traffic lights just completely go out. So you have no idea like what to do. And I think he's in like some Airbnb and the host even like marketed that they have generators to keep the Wi-Fi on. So he'll be like working and the power will go out. So he's in complete darkness, but at least the Wi-Fi still works. So he can like get his work done, which I thought was kind of like this weird future dystopian concept.
Like what the hell?
Yeah. Like what is this place?
Yeah, no, I mean people all over the world that actually have running water, electricity, plumbing, stuff like that. They're taking it for granted, man. Like there's
Yeah.
a
And I think
lot of places that don't have that.
yeah, it's almost like like a normal human trait, you kind of just like normalize everything around you,
Oh yeah.
which
Oh
I
yeah.
think is interesting. Like you get buy the fancy new car and you're happy for like a month or so, or maybe more, but then you just normalize it as that's like the base level because
Right.
maybe you kind of like have to as just a human so you can start thinking about other stuff. But I don't know. It's an
No,
interesting concept.
that's 100% true, and that's something that I was thinking about actually just the other day about how it's never enough for humans. So,
Yeah.
and that's why we keep fucking up everything, right? Like once we solve one thing, it's like, all right, what else can we solve? And all of these solutions just create more problems, right? So, um,
Yeah.
it's just a constant motion of I need to go quote unquote forward.
Yeah, right. Which is like maybe not even I don't, the best for ourselves. Like I think I've
Right.
read somewhere that like to really like desire for more and to like want something is to like suffer. So the only way that you can really not suffer is to not really desire for like anything, which is kind of like I think like a Buddhist type saying, which is interesting, but I'm like, yeah, maybe that is uh a way to like really think about things. But then it's confusing because then if you like truly follow that way of thinking, then maybe you accomplish nothing and you don't. I don't know.
Yeah,
You
and I
know what
mean,
I'm
at that
saying?
point, it becomes what do you define as an accomplishment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's something that, again, me and my friends, for whatever reason, talk about this shit all the time. Um, like remember Miguel in Mexico?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I still have him on Instagram. I see his posts often.
Yeah, like we would have this conversation about like why white people have like taken over the world, and it's just it seems like white people in general, and again, not to be racist, and not to like say that every white person is the same or anything like that, but if
Hmm.
you look at historical, it just they had more of an incentive or more of a drive to get more and do more. And the perfect example is something that me and my buddy David were talking about the other day is you take, and again, not always, but you take a minority and you give them an opportunity to make, I don't know, let's just say $50,000 a year. And they used to be making, $10 an hour. Now all of a sudden you give them a pay raise. They'll be like more than satisfied, right? They'll be like, wow, this is great. Like I am thankful for it. I'm going to be content. I'm going to be happy, XYZ.
Hmm.
And then you take someone, I don't know, that is probably white, grew up, nicer neighborhood or whatever. And again, this just generalizing things, but you give them 50K and they're like, all right, great. This is a great starting point. Now, how can I get more?
Yeah,
It's that
yeah, exactly.
mentality, right? Um, and that's something that I personally struggle with myself because I am more than happy with where I am in life, with what I have, XYZ. And at the same time, I see other people making more, like literally raining money out in the economic system, right? Like if I wanted to, I could probably hustle my ass off and get rich as fuck. But is that something that I actually want? Is that something that I need? Like, what satisfaction will that bring me?
Yeah. And I think like a lot of the people that do hustle their asses off to try and get rich as fuck. I think it is almost like slightly short-sighted because they think that once they get that little bit more, they will be happy. Or like once they get the promotion, once they buy the car, once they get the hot wife, it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be worth it. But just having that mentality in the first place is just something that shows that you will never be satisfied as a person, which I
Right.
think is interesting and like it is there is something to be said about just like living in the present and being content with just where you are right now as you are.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance of getting what you quote unquote need and
Yeah.
making sure that you have what you can to protect not just yourself, but obviously your family, your future, all that good stuff. But after that, there's not really a need to go buy a sports car or a
Hmm.
speedboat or I don't know, own a block here in New York City, right? Like, do you really need that? No, but it's just
No,
one of those
definitely not.
human nature things where it's like, well, it'd be nice.
It could be better. Like I could have a better life. Or like I don't
Yeah,
know if
and I
that's
mean,
a
no matter how high you
material
get,
problem.
no matter how you get, there's always going to be somebody like even higher, right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, once you get to that point and you're a slave to whatever craft you're doing, whether it's real estate, art, whatever it is that got you there, you become almost like a slave to that because you have to keep it up, right? You can't just let it go, and you're always going to want more or want something new or something different. And then at that point, you're going to look at people who just live a regular life, happy with what they have, and be like, man, I wish I was that, or I could have
Yeah,
that.
right.
You know, like there's always something. There's always something.
Always something. The plight of humanity.
Yeah, and actually, I just finished reading the biography of Alexander the Great, and before he went on his quest to conquer Asia, he met with a philosopher I think I want to say it was in Greece, and
The Dionysus.
no, it was a philosopher, but like not like a prophet or anything like that. I don't
Hmm.
think. And he went to go talk to him, and the guy was basically a homeless guy, like just barely had any clothes on, or maybe he was butt naked. I don't remember. And he smelled like shit and all sort of stuff. And like he exchanged words with him and took away some philosophy and all this other stuff. And one of the guys that was with Alexander the Great was like, man, what a piece of shit, you know? Like, look at him. He's dirty, homeless, naked. Like, and Alexander the Great was like, man, if I wasn't king, I'd be one. I'd want to be him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's living and just that's it. He's
He's just
living.
living. No responsibility, like
Right.
just enjoying the moment.
Like look at
Yeah,
the birds. Look at the birds outside. Like how many of them have a job or a career or savings accounts? None of them.
right.
None of
Yeah.
them.
They don't pay taxes.
Oh,
Yeah.
nobody
I
can.
think that guy was named Diogenes or something.
I don't
I
remember the
think
name.
that's it. I can't remember. Oh well, it's not important, but yeah,
Now I'm
it is.
googling it. I'm googling now. Alexander.
But it is interesting. Sure. So many different ways you can live life, and like it's all perspective. And there's no inherent or objective like right away or right or wrong way to live. It's kind of like we have to decide that for ourselves, um, and then live the best way that we see fit, I think.
Yeah. And there has to be a balance, right? Because at the same time, we live in a society, right? There's a social contract.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it is di Diogenes.
Something
Dio
like
Diog.
that.
I suck at names and
I suck at names too.
Diogenes,
Something like that.
Corin,
Diogenes says
Diogenes.
Diogenes.
Yeah. Uh, and I want to say that there is a quote, and I won't look it up, but I'm pretty sure there's a quote like, "What after you conquer the world? Like what then?" Because I mean that's just that's I mean this is all like human philosophy, right? Like what? Okay, like you said, you get a cool car, hot wife. Now what?
Now, yeah, now you can finally enjoy your life, bro.
Yeah, like what the hell? You're
Yeah,
just gonna normalize it, and they're gonna be like, "Man, I want something else."
yeah. It's you got to realize that the journey like is the destination. Like you got to be content with the whole path. You can't just think that this sucks, but eventually I'm gonna get to a point where it gets better because if you think that way, I just don't know if that'll ever come for you.
Right, right. Damn, I just finished reading this book and I already forgot. I did just start. Actually, appropriately, I just started listening to the biography of Simon Bolivar,
Oh yeah.
and apparently he was also batshit crazy. Um, but like he was from Venezuela, and I
Hmm.
guess you saw in Colombia, like every park was named after him, right?
Yeah. There was quite a few references.
And wait, and you're in Argentina, so you're in the home of Ernesto Che Guevara.
Yes.
Do you know Che? Well, yeah, you know Che.
I
Um,
know sorry,
Fidel's right hand man.
yeah. Sorry.
Uh,
Che.
yep. Hasta la victoria siempre. Um, the man, I actually went to a restaurant in Mexico City where him and Fidel used to meet before they went on their journey to Cuba,
Oh, that's
which
cool.
I thought was like super cool. I don't know. I'm into
Yeah.
like all these like random historical things, but which is why I went to Istanbul to like see an area that has been fought for trillions of years now,
Yeah.
because it is that key between Europe and Asia and Asia
Yeah.
Minor and all that other stuff. But anyways, how has been the Spanish for you between all of these countries? Because when Miguel and I went to Colombia and we were listening to some of the locals talk, we were like, "What the fuck are they saying?"
Yeah, I think that has slightly stunted my learning path just because I go somewhere for like 2 months or something, and then I go to the next place and the accent is completely different. They are use different things
Mm-hmm.
for like different words for different things. So I have to like relearn those things, and then I forget the old things. So
Right.
it's been quite a journey, but I also appreciate just like understanding that they are so different and intricate because I think a lot of people, especially from the US or maybe Europe, uh, think of Spanish and they just group it all into like Mexican Spanish or something because that's what they're most used to. But it is just kind of like eye-opening and interesting to see all these different countries have like different ways of basically saying the same thing, which I like.
Yeah, the Spanish that they teach in school is from Spain, which is to me a little weird, but I mean it makes sense because it's like the base, I guess. But if you go around the world, that's the least spoken Spanish out there.
Yeah, exactly.
In Argentina, do they use vosotros? Vos?
Uh, they don't use they use vos
Uh-huh.
uh often. I think they only use vos. They don't use vosotros. Um, but it's like pretty easy to get a handle of. I think the hard thing for me is the just the accent. Like
Yeah.
everything is like a sh instead of like a ya.
Yep. It's not
So
tortilla, it's tortilla.
yeah, or I was saying like I was trying to give directions to the guy in the taxi, and I was saying like calle Dames, and he like didn't understand me because it's calle Dames, and I'm like, what the fuck? But it is one of those things that you slowly just like get used to, and then once you like understand it, it's not that big of a deal. Kind of like how in Spain they speak with like a lisp. Like I'm sure at first that's kind of
Hmm.
difficult, but then once you understand it, then you're fine.
Yeah, my aunt is from Spain, and when she talks, yeah, you can definitely hear the difference. My cousin is living in Spain. The few times I talk to her, you hear a huge difference. And even here in New York, I live in a Dominican neighborhood.
Yeah.
And when I go order in Spanish and everything else, I mean, my Spanish starts to kind of adapt to their Spanish, where it's more open-ended Spanish almost.
Hmm.
I don't know how to describe it. Uh, but yeah, it's a very different accent. And I remember when I was in Peru, the guy that was like, I was like hang gliding or something. I don't know what you call it, but the guy was like, "Oh, I used to live in New York." I was like, "Oh yeah, New York's awesome." Blah blah blah. He's like, "Yeah, man, those Puerto Ricans are destroying our language." I was like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" And he's like,
That's
"Man, the
funny.
the way they talk." they don't even pronunciate like the letters. They just kind of like leave it, like, again, the best way I can describe it is they leave it open. They don't, I don't know. I'm not good with language. I can't describe it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was just like, yeah, it is a very different accent and very different style. But to each their own, right? Like everybody has their own Espanol.
Yeah. I think the just th through my experience, the hardest one for me to understand was in Chile.
Really?
Like they just speak like so ridiculously fast, that I have like no idea what they're trying to say. So like after a while, I was just like, I'm not even gonna try. Like I'll say my Spanglish, but if you're gonna say something back to me at normal pace, out of context or whatever, I'm like, I like it's not even worth like trying because there's
Right.
like no way I could fucking do it.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely the toughest was now I haven't been to too many Spanish speaking countries, but Colombia for me was like a little bit challenging.
Yeah,
Because that one was also a little bit of a thick accent.
yeah,
And yeah, they use slightly different words. I can't even remember an example, but I remember I went in to like order some chicken. They had some banging fried chicken in Colombia.
yeah, they did.
I was like, holy shit, I was not expecting this.
Did you go
Um,
to were you in Bogota
yeah, I just
or
went to Bogota. I went to like a music festival out there.
yeah, with Miguel, right? I
Yep.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an extended weekend trip, but I was a little surprised at the economic distress. Um, Surprised by the fried chicken. And I was surprised by the lack of public transportation, or maybe not the lack of public transportation, but the efficiency of the public transportation.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't go to Bogota, but I was in
Medellin.
uh yeah, Medellin for a little bit. And it was okay. There's probably one of the sketchier places that I've been to. And for some reason it's like it's really big in the digital nomad community. Everyone's
Mm.
like, "Oh, you gotta go to Medellin. It's like it's the best. It's amazing." But I think like everyone wants different things, and I feel like Medellin, from my experience, would be like really fun if you were really into like coke and hookers. Like I would just like go out and there'd be like so many people like trying to give me coke, like women on the street asking me if I wanted a girlfriend, and you hear so many stories about people preying on like for like a night a change, paying on these wealthy foreigners and drugging them, tempting them with like sex, and they like wake up in their apartments like 3 days later with all their stuff gone, and that was like a common occurrence. um I knew a guy that happened to while I was there. Some other girl got like robbed at gunpoint in the back of an Uber. And you can just like feel it on the street too. It's definitely like I don't know. I thought it was kind of sketchy, but it's a beautiful place and like the nature and like everything else is really cool. But I just thought that aspect of it was a little sketchy in my opinion.
Nah, for sure. Like I was very surprised at the economic distress and the sketchiness of Colombia as a whole,
Hmm.
or at least Bogota, you know. And literally we stayed in like a non-touristy area, graffiti everywhere, trash everywhere. We saw probably like three cops our entire time there. Um, it was just like, damn, all right. Like
Yeah.
you think you have it rough in like other areas, but you show up to Bogota and it sounds like Medellin maybe a little bit as well. And it's like, all right, you gotta keep an eye out, right?
Yeah, definitely got to keep an eye out. And like everyone's like, yeah, don't go to these neighborhoods like after this time. Like if you look like a foreigner, like you're fucked. Like you're gonna get robbed, like almost. Definitely. So just stuff to be aware of. And it's like you kind of like when you're traveling quite a lot, you do a lot of research about that stuff, but you never really know. I feel how a place is going to be until you truly get there and you can experience it for yourself. Because I talked to a lot of people and they like had the time of their lives there and like really enjoyed it and didn't think it was
Right.
sketchy at all. But
Right.
that's just from their perspective, I guess. And people enjoy different things.
No, absolutely. And back to like South Africa, there was a little strip by the water in Cape Town that literally was pristine, clean, little shopping center, shops, restaurants, a couple of hotels. So if you ever went to Cape Town and you stayed in that tiny little area and then took little bus trips to like Cape of Good Hope and other places, you'd be like, wow, South Africa is pretty great, you know?
Yeah.
But as soon as you leave that little strip and you go downtown and other little areas, it's like, oh shit, like this is real. Like this is fucking real.
Yeah.
Um,
Like if you never leave Polanco in Mexico City or whatever, you
right.
might have a warped view of what
Yep.
Mexico City is.
Yep. Yep. I mean, this is yeah. So it's crazy. I applaud you for just traveling and going into new places and trying new things, man. I think that's fucking awesome and ballsy.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it and I like it so far. Haven't had any like super negative experiences, like knock on wood, like haven't been robbed or anything. Haven't been in anything too sketchy, but I do like just I don't know. There's a saying in Colombia, it's no dar papaya, like don't give papaya, and it just means like don't like make it obvious or don't make it easy to like get robbed, you know? And I think I try
Mm,
and just like while I'm traveling, just practicing all that, like eliminating single points of failure, like only take one card out at a time or like just enough cash
yep.
for the night, stuff like that.
Yep.
And luckily nothing has happened to me so far. So
Yeah, it's some of those common
thankful.
sense things that some people just don't always have. Like I remember one tourist one time like pulled out his little fanny pack and I mean he had like his entire life in there and I'm like, dude, somebody comes by with scissors, snatches that thing off of you, you're fucked.
You fucked. Yeah.
Like you're
There goes
fucked.
your whole shit. Yeah. You like probably has your passport, like everything in it. And like, what are you gonna do?
Before I let you go, and obviously this is open discussion where you can absolutely say no, but would you be willing to talk about some of your experiences in the non-traditional medical world? Because I know that you like did some journeys and went out and like did some had some experiences. Would you be willing to talk about that?
In the non-traditional medical world.
That's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, yeah. Sure. Why not? Yeah,
um, yeah.
that's
So
funny. I've never heard of that.
I mean, look, man. Some people are very open about it. Some people are not. Some people.
No, I don't care. I think it's important to have information spoken freely about. So yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
I can yeah.
I mean, I'll just set it up by saying like, I know the first time I took acid, it was like a game changer, right? Like, it was just one of those like, oh shit, like I don't know, like energy just came to me and things just kind of like made sense.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that when Miguel took DMT, that motherfucker like melted and went through the pipes of his building and then like had this euphoric feeling for like a week or two.
Yeah.
And like just understanding himself and like that everything's not that serious and that like life is good, right? Like obviously he can describe it a lot better than I can, but um I remember that you did a little trip. Was it to Oaxaca or
Um, no, it was to Morelos.
Morelos?
Yeah, in Mexico. But yeah, I can just yeah, start from the beginning, I guess. But I found this like cool experience. And it's called a Temazcal, and it's like a ancient Aztec kind of like sweat lodge type thing. Um, and then so I signed up for that and I really enjoyed that. But what that is basically you go into this like dirt hut in the ground. And there's like a pool of water. in the middle, and the shaman brings in these like volcanic heated rocks and puts it in the puddle in the middle of the dirt hut, and it basically creates this like huge, uh, almost like underground steam room, and you stay in that for a very long time, and you burn these like different herbs and stuff like that, and it's supposed to kind of induce some kind of like emotional release or something. Um, so I did that, and I really enjoyed that experience. And through that, I met some other people that were kind of like running it, that were also doing this mushroom experience like 2 weeks later or whatever. So basically from Mexico City, drove with these people to Morelos, into this house in the middle of the forest. It was super beautiful, super beautiful house. There were five of us taking the mushrooms, and one shaman, and uh, sorry, basically the experience. We started off and we took like an introspective view. We had to write around about like all of our feelings about what we are, who we are, what we want out of life. Kind of just like very introspective things and what we wanted to get out of the trip.
Did you write fast car, hot wife?
Fast car, hot wife,
Large
big house,
house.
big house, yeah, big
People are
plane,
so, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so then we did that and shared everything kind of like with the group. We didn't have to, but everyone was pretty open and we all wanted to be friendly and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome.
so did that. Um, and then the next day, we fasted basically until 1 p.m. And just doing kind of more like the introspective stuff. We took some walks around like the beautiful garden that we were in. Um, and the shaman had actually picked the mushrooms from like the local forest. And so when it was time for the ceremony, he just had them in this like huge chalice, and uh like the ceremony kind of started, and we had to give the respect to the mushroom and uh that whole kind of thing, which I thought was very interesting. We burned a bunch of herbs, and it was basically, he was just like, the mushroom will tell you when enough is enough. So
Hmm.
you can take as much as you want, and you will feel when you've like had enough. So we're all kind of just there chatting and just eating the mushrooms, which still had like dirt and rocks and like other
Really
shit just still on them, and they weren't dried or anything, they were wet. But
interesting.
basically, yeah, just ate a bunch of those. Um,
When you ate them, one, did they taste bad or were they
um,
just kind of earthy?
yeah, it's kind of earthy with like a hint of like battery acid. If that makes any sense. It's like
Oh
it's
man.
hard to describe, but
Yeah.
it's like it's earthy, but there's like this weird tanginess to it that kind of just like feels strange on your tongue, like you're like licking a battery or something. I don't
Interesting.
know.
And how, so obviously you eat as much as you need. Um, was there like a 5 minute interval when you grab more, or is it just kind of like go at your own pace?
It was just like go at your own pace. So we just slowly we're just eating them and uh talking and uh continually eating more and more.
Were most people there speaking English?
No, actually they weren't.
Okay.
It was mainly in Spanish.
Okay.
The shaman spoke English, and then two of the other people spoke English. But mainly he would give uh like he would talk in Spanish and then translate afterwards
Okay.
for me, and some of the other people would help with the translation stuff as well, which was super helpful and very nice of them.
Awesome.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, the trip kind of started. I started out uh in the in the woods in the garden, and I don't, it's so hard to describe these kind of things, but it was just
Yeah.
like so amazing. I'm like seeing plants that I've like never even seen before, that if you were completely sober, I'd still be infatuated with. But then just adding that tripping element, I'm like pulling on these things that look like springs. I don't even know what they are, playing with all these random plants and just kind of like enjoying myself in the garden. And it's just, I'm just having this feeling of like overwhelming, like happiness and joy, which I thought was amazing. Um, After like a while, it started getting pretty intense, and I was like, okay, I kind of want to go a little more internal. So I went up to the room I had in the house, and I just put on a blindfold and put on some like kind of like ambient music to kind of like help me just like go inside. And probably for like the next like 3 hours or something, it was just like almost orgasmic like happiness, and I'm just
Hmm.
like sitting there. And at first my thoughts were like all in Spanish, or like maybe it was the mushrooms talking to me in Spanish. I don't know if that's just because I was hearing a lot of Spanish recently and it was just kind of like rattling around in my head. But one of the main questions that I asked it was just like, am I on the right path in life? Like, am I doing like what I need to do to like really, I don't know, be happy as a person? Because I'm really, like, I just started kind of like my traveling journey while working, so I was still maybe a little apprehensive about whether this was like what I really wanted to do.
Right.
Um, but the answer that I kind of like got was just like a resounding like yes. Like there's stuff that you need to like figure out in your life, but it's okay because like inevitably you're going to figure it out. So there's like no reason to be anxious about it
Yep.
right now, just because it's going to work out, and the path that you are on is the exact right path that you need to be on. So just like relax, bro, chill,
Hmm.
and just like live your life and be happy. And it was just so much of that, and just like positive affirmations, I guess, and just like internally the feeling of just like pure joy, just like radiating like all around me through like through every cell in my body is uh quite an enlightening experience, I guess.
That's incredible. Um, Definitely jealous. I think it's just really quick. I think it's awesome that you guys all gave thanks to the mushrooms and gave it the respect, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that was like a very important part of the whole ritual too. Was that like we really had to like show the respect to what we were doing, and it wasn't like something to kind of be like taken lightly. It was like something like very important, um, which I did really appreciate that too.
yeah, I think that that's awesome. And that's something that when I talk to people about these alternative drugs and medicine and all this other stuff, or experiences, because it's not always medical, right? It's more of a journey and experience. But anyway, people always start to go right to the stereotypes, right? Oh, you have problems. Oh, you're depressed. Oh, you're addicted. Oh, whatever. And it's like, no, like not at all, right?
Hmm.
Like that, none of that applies to most of these instances. And so the fact that there was an acknowledgement of, hey, we're lucky to experience this and we're lucky to kind of have this ability. Let's all give like the respect and the thanks to what we're about to do. I think is like key to a lot of things in life, and not just those little magical things. Like this sounds really cheesy, but whenever I do throw away any like clothing or whatever, I always say thank you, because it's like there's tons of people out there that don't have it. I am lucky enough to like just grab this shirt that's 20 years old and throw it away, right?
Yeah,
um
yeah. It's just like showing gratitude for I don't like everything in your life. and
Right.
like being happy for what you have.
Absolutely. And on in a journey like that where you actually do go inward, um, I mean, most people in this world will never get to do that. And the
Hmm.
fact that you can do that and are willing to do that is like that in itself is like super rare. Um, because I mean, you if you talk to me like literally 5 years ago, I'd probably be like, dude, if you do shrooms, you're like a pothead or like a druggie or like you got problems or something.
Yeah, it's fucked up the stereotypes that we have as a society about these things, but I think it just is stems from being uneducated about uh what like what they actually are. And I think like because it is a tool that can obviously
Yes.
be abused as well. And a lot
Yes.
of people like get super drunk and then eat some mushrooms and then they just like people see that like the person at a bar like that says he took mushrooms and he's just like not really respecting the tool for what it can accomplish and just kind of
Right.
like fucking around with it. And like I mean to each their own, but I think that can like definitely harbor some kind of like or like prove the stereotype right in some ways. But I think if more people understand that it is a tool that, if used in the right ways, can do extraordinary things, I think we would probably be better off as a society.
Oh, absolutely. If everybody was trained to do stuff like that at a certain age, yeah, I mean, the world would be very, very, very different.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, that's incredible that you got to do that.
Have you seen the there's a documentary by Michael Pollan called How to Change Your Mind, and it's also a book as well. And I watched that documentary and um I haven't read the book, but I really want to. But it's just kind of breaking down those barriers that we have as a society to some of these untraditional medical items that we can use to like really change our mind and for a lot of people solve problems in their lives or just open themselves up to new perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge of society as a whole is accepting alternative viewpoints, traditions, even as basic as like skin color, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
there are too many people out there who look at a skin color and they're like, I know what this guy's about.
yeah.
Um, and and it's okay. And this is a very complicated, delicate line to walk, but I do believe that it's okay to have some assumptions because, like, when you see a strawberry that it's like covered in white mold, you're going to make the assumption that you shouldn't eat that, and it's probably not good, right? So it's
Hmm.
instilled in our human nature, and all animals on this planet have that instinct of being able to see something and be like, probably not, or oh, that looks great, and I want that, like a preference, a safety measure, XYZ, and that's
Yeah.
completely normal. So, with that being said, when you look at other people and you see someone dressed a certain way, acting a certain way, saying certain things, it's natural for your head to naturally put assumptions and be like, okay, this is probably a situation where I shouldn't go. Like I remember one time I was in Mexico walking in Iztapalapa, and I like to walk as many places as I could just to explore the city. And I turned into this neighborhood. And again, not because I'm racist or prejudiced or anything like that, but there was a neighborhood where it was like, you know what? I'm going to turn around. Like, I'm not going to
Hmm.
walk through that neighborhood because it's probably going to be trouble.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to allow yourself a certain degree of prejudgment and stuff like that, but to take it to another level of saying, oh, well, I had a bad experience with this, super pale white dude. So now I'm going to assume that super pale white dudes are the devil and they're bad and they're always going to be out there to hurt me. Or I should probably go and attack them or be, I don't know, all that. That's taking it at another level that should not happen and would not happen if people were a little bit more open minded and willing to accept the nuances and the fact that we're all human, right? Like and
Hmm.
that's what these journeys are about, right? Like opening up and letting the universe talk to you instead of you talking to the universe,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like that.
Um, that's a whole just rant for no reason, but I apologize.
No, no, I think it's like very important because I think as humans, like we're almost like built to categorize stuff because that's just
Correct.
like how our brains like work. We want to like put things in boxes because then we can like make sense of them and
Yep.
decide good or bad or like whatever else. But it is like you just have to be careful because if you do that too much, then you can make yourself pretty close-minded, and
Yep.
it is important to still stay open-minded and that like what happened in your past or whatever is not necessarily indicative of what is going to happen in the future. Um, but it's kind of like a case by case basis, and you just gotta
Absolutely.
think about stuff like that.
Yeah. Mike, I honestly appreciate your time, your openness, your candid take on things and what you've seen and what you've explored and experienced, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. This has been kind of fun. This is my first time I've ever really done something like this and recorded it. So it's been my pleasure.
It's in the history books, man. It's in the history books now. All right. Well, take care, dude. Be careful out there as always. And keep having fun, man. Like I'm super jealous. And I admire what you're doing. I don't know if I could do it for like a year, at least not at this point in my life because I'm old, but um definitely enjoy it, man. Make the most of it.
Yeah, definitely I will. I was gonna ask, do you have any other travel plans in the future? I think I might try and go back to Mexico City at some point this year. Maybe New York. I don't know. We'll see.
Dude, I am so tired of traveling. Like I literally just went to Mexico, then I went to Atlantic City, then I went to Charleston, then I went to Charlotte, and then that was all like within 2, 3 weeks.
That's a lot.
Um, and after my Africa trip late last year, I was just like, man, like I can't do this anymore.
Just want to chill. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that too,
No,
for
and
sure.
honestly, like New York City is amazing. So I cannot sit here and be upset because there's a million neighborhoods that I have yet to explore, even though I've explored a million of them.
Yeah,
And that's the beauty of New York, I think, is that you can literally go on trips without having to like fly or drive anywhere. Um,
yeah. It's so much to discover.
yeah, but hey, man, if you ever come up here, let me know. I'll definitely show you around. I got some people coming into town on Friday, and I'll probably show them around a little bit. But yeah, I think my next trip will probably be Europe or something. I don't know. I got to figure it out.
Cool.
I want
Yeah.
to go to Antarctica. Have you been to Antarctica?
No, I haven't yet. You can you can take trips from like the southern tip of Argentina in Ushuaia. And you can actually just hang out there and get like really cheap tickets if they don't fill up the boats. But I haven't done that, but it would be kind of cool. But I talked with friends that have done it, and they said there's tons of penguins, like cold as fuck, like everything you would probably expect.
All right, all right. Keep like do your research. If you do make it out there, let me know. Because that is on my
Yeah,
bucket list. I am.
Antarctica trip.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I had a friend a couple years ago who actually turned down the opportunity to do that because she was doing like some volunteer work down in Argentina.
Hmm.
And like similar to what you said, I guess there's people out there like boating people to Antarctica.
Yeah.
And I guess they offered her like a really cheap ticket. And at the time, she just didn't have the money or the time. And so she passed up on it. I was like, holy shit. Because then if you Google it, it's like $30,000 for like a trip out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It
you've
is.
seen those. They're like cruise lines that will take you to Antarctica or something like that.
Yeah, I think some of them are ridiculously expensive, but I think you can get away with doing it for a lot less than that. But I haven't done too much research into it.
Well, you find out, you let me know, and I will fly down there and I will literally go and set foot on Antarctica and go dance with some penguins or something.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. Well, take care and appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. I guess keep in touch via Instagram or something like that.
Hell yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good, dude.